What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on What If Deku was in SAO Part 5. And I do want to start off by saying sorry, for not actually uploading. That is my bad. I will apologize. I had a slight migraine yesterday, which caused me not to upload or even really look at my phone. So, yeah, that's my bad. But rather than continue on and asking for forgiveness, I figured I would just go on and keep producing what ifs, because that's what y'all like. So I'm going to shout out the people that joined the Discord, and then I'm going to just jump straight into this. Thank you, I'm a Sloth, Zenzar, Koichioma, Saruto, LazyKeen 104, and Lit Kid. Thank you all for joining the Discord. If you want to join the Discord, go down in the description down below and go ahead and join. People are there, talk, chill, most of the time. You can probably message one thing and have people respond to you. And so, yeah, if you think you would like to have someone new to talk to or want to promote yourself, which is another possibility, go ahead and check out the Discord down below. Other than that, let's jump straight into this what if. Where we last left off, Izuku was just about to fight the boss. Sadly though, after the boss came into the corner, it was quickly struck down after Izuku revealed its weakness to everyone else for just simply telling them. This caused everyone to almost instantaneously gank it and kill it in a rather quick manner. Of course, afterwards, Izuku sighed knowing that he had finished, basically his job for the day. But then he also thought about it and he looked over to his friend, which he kind of saw as a brother at this point. He saw Kirito and Asuna chatting. So Izuku got a devilish smirk, put his hand beneath his chin, as he walked over to Kirito. They chatted, of course, Kirito being slightly confused on what Izuku was smiling about, but Izuku told him it was nothing. Eventually, Asuna said that they'll take them out on a, lunch interview to get something to eat, and as a thanks for completing the thing and helping out. Kirito accepted, but Izuku's grin just grew slightly bigger, as he then stated, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't do that right now," which confused Asuna and Kirito both. Kirito was majority confused because he didn't understand why Izuku couldn't do it. And then he looked to his message system and saw that Deku had messaged him something pretty different. He messaged him to go for it and that he would be rooting for him. This confused Kirito, of course, at first, but then he realized what Izuku was talking about and almost wanted to hit his friend, as Izuku quickly dipped out. Of course, Izuku ended up looking for stuff to do and just decided to do some passive leveling. Wasn't anything too big. Also decided to start hunting down some red players to try to fight. Eventually, he heard from Kirito again as they were talking. Kirito almost damned him for leaving him with Asuna, and then he heard out that Kirito was actually caught in a murder investigation, which Izuku laughed. Kirito asked Izuku for his assistance because he knew his ability, Ares' Grace, would be able to help him in most case scenarios with this investigation. Of course, Izuku did so, and during the investigation, he told Kirito that the girl they had investigated didn't die. This confused Kirito before Kirito, with the help of Izuku, put together that since the two parties were married, most likely what she was trying to do was nonetheless trying to just, gain a basic favor would be the best way to state it, and gain the inventory and find the killer of the first guy. Of course, since Izuku and Kirito knew this, they both automatically put the stop to it and had an encounter with Laughing Coffin. Afterwards, Kirito and Asuna slowly became closer and closer, while Izuku stayed out of their way, not wanting to be a third wheel, of course. Eventually, after some time, Izuku slowly started to become a solo player. He leveled up his stealth a little bit, and also some of his main exact stats that he wanted to ensure he got better with. Of course, this unlocked him a few new skills like Superior Sneak, which allowed him to sneak by most people without being detected, and some other things that made him, well, pretty apparent to most abilities not to be detected. Of course, this coupled in with Izuku's Aries Grace made him a threat on the battlefield, one scarier than most people could even manage. Of course, Izuku knew this all fair and well, but he decided not to comment on it, mainly understanding that commenting on it would show no greater difference than if he didn't comment on it. Of course, over the time, he heard that Kirito and Asuna were taking a honeymoon. Izuku was delighted by this, and was kind of confused because he didn't even hear a marriage. But then eventually, after talking with Kirito for a bit, Izuku realized that they really didn't have a married, and were just married in-game, and wanted to take a honeymoon. Kirito offered Izuku to come, but Izuku almost wanted to slap his friend, mainly just for the simplest reason that him coming was foolish to even recommend it's a honeymoon, he responded. This caused Kirito to almost slap his head in, well, belittling understanding. Of course, this caused Izuku to laugh even more, as he thanked him before quickly dashing out himself. Izuku continued to train pretty frivolously, constantly becoming stronger and stronger. He didn't know how strong Kirito would eventually be when they eventually met back up, but he knew himself that he was pretty strong. He also realized over the time when him and Kirito were away that Kirito was no longer a part of the Midnight Cats, which confused Izuku, but decided not to question on it, expecting that his brother had of course obviously joined his wife's guild, seeing how his wife herself was second in command in that guild. This caused Izuku to sigh. Before diligently getting back to his training, he decided to train fishing, since it was a relatively simple task. Of course, he went down to the town of Beginnings after some time and met a woman. Izuku knew that the town of Beginnings had the army, as they called themselves, stationed there, so he really didn't like spending much of his time. But eventually, he found a lady at an orphanage who was being harassed by the soldiers. He helped her out and offered his assistance to, well, help daily patrol and keep track of the kids. Izuku was always very much so more akin to wanting to help people, so he offered his help way quicker than the lady could even, well, reject. Of course, after a little bit of prodding by Izuku, she accepted it without much cost to herself. Of course, Izuku graciously smiled at her before he continued on with what he was doing. Having stealth and increasing his agility made him way stronger and faster than he expected. He also continued to train fishing, much more as a hobby though. He enjoyed the action quite a bit, and just being able to do it without much care in the world was a nice thought, to say the least. He then ended up deciding that he would eventually conclude most of his training, especially hearing that his brother was about to, well, come back. Of course, Izuku was excited for Kirito, Seeing how he was the one that kind of egged on Asuna and Kirito a lot, he was quite excited to see how the couple had formed together, especially in their secludedness. What shocked Izuku was the fact that when they came back, they had a child with them. Izuku immediately was confused because so far there should be no way to have a kid inside the game. Like a physical kid. But then he noticed something weird. While looking at this child that Kirito introduced as Yui, he was able to tell that something was wrong. She wasn't a normal kid. But something was blocking him from reading all of her information. Even her stats and skills itself seemed to outright resist Izuku's abilities. This confused him greatly, to say the least, as he slowly started to figure out and put pieces together that she must be some part of administration, or have abilities akin to someone of the administration-style class. Of course, Izuku himself was kind of worried about this, but of course, seeing what he perceived to be basically his brother be quite happy with their family dynamic, he decided against saying anything for the time being. Of course, this was until a woman showed up someday and asked for something rather strange. She had lost a man called the Tinkerer. Of course, Izuku had no clue who this was, but eventually the woman said that the Tinkerer was a pretty smart and intelligent man. So Izuku took the obligatory option of deciding to try to help the woman, until he eventually found out that the woman herself seems to be infatuated or in love with the man. Of course, this caused Izuku to laugh. Eventually, Izuku decided that he would try to go find the Tinkerer. Kirito didn't know about this at this point, and Izuku didn't need him to. Of course, he had heard about the dungeon below the town of beginnings from the woman, so Izuku decided to head down there. This was a grave mistake, of course, as soon as Izuku walked in there, he could feel something was off. Looking around, he was able to tell that this dungeon was way higher level than anyone was meant to be at this point. Easily able to take out most people if they even attempted to fight. This confused Izuku quite a bit, wondering how anyone was meant to even do anything in here. Of course, he eventually ended up deciding that the base of it shouldn't be him worrying and should be him actually attempting to solve the issue rather than fretting that the issue would get too bad for him to solve. Izuku then ended up quickly making his way throughout the dungeon, until he almost rounded a corner. He saw a man staying in a safety area, and was able to make out what the man was trying to tell him, thanks to Ares' grace. He was able to tell very simply that the man said that there was a very strong creature, and that they couldn't leave because of it. This confused Izuku. Knowing that the man himself seemed to be very intelligent, he decided to ask, what does the creature look like, and what does it do? By obligation, the man told him that the creature looked like a Grim Reaper and ended up taking very large and dangerous and deadly strikes. This caused Izuku to be, well, quite a base, afraid, mainly because a creature of that caliber could easily take not only him out, but Kirito too. Luckily, he thanked himself for not bringing Kirito along, not wanting to endanger him, as Izuku then quickly decided to start dashing throughout the area. This confused the man greatly, though, who was on the other side, confused why anyone would even dare attempt to put their own lives at risk. This caused Izuku to sigh, understanding why the man was probably so confused. The base of anyone doing anything like that was nearly unheard of. The fact that Izuku was just doing it regularly would be ones to scare plenty of people. So he ended up deciding just to quickly take care of it. Of course, he was able to dodge most of the attacks thanks to his high agility. And his sneak allowed him to basically turn invisible to most monsters at this point, so it wasn't an issue to get through. Eventually, the man, still dumbfounded by Izuku's capabilities, questioned him on it. Eventually, Izuku stated that while the man was correct that the opponent was a very dangerous man, Izuku was able to, relatively easily bypass most of the creature's abilities, causing it to be almost impossible for the creature to actually stop him. This caused the man to give Izuku a very confused look, almost like he was impervious to any of the words Izuku was saying and couldn't make sense of them. Of course, this caused Izuku to sigh and shrug his shoulders, deciding to let the man bolster for the time being. Eventually, he got the Tinkerer out with a combination of his speed and stealth again. Izuku sighed as he quickly got the man back up to the top. Kirito was very confused, but noticed almost instantly that something was off when Izuku wasn't around. This caused Asuna to worry as well because she cared for Kirito's friends almost as much as Kirito did. Of course, this was a symbol of her love that made the care more than anything else, but the sentiment was still there. Izuku eventually apologized before Kirito said, "I didn't ask for an apology, I want to know where you went." This caused Izuku to sigh before he stated, "I went down into the secret dungeon below the town of beginnings to save the man called Tinkerer. He was in a dangerous situation, and I decided rather not to endanger you or endanger the lives of your family members." This confused Kirito, thinking that Izuku should be just about around the same level as him. If not, Kirito should be higher. But then he remembered while he was on honeymoon, Izuku wasn't. He was constantly working and striving to get through the later floors, as well as helping out around here apparently. Obviously, this meant that he couldn't be, just the same exact level as Kirito. Of course, Kirito didn't want to believe this at first, but knew more than well enough that this was most likely the case. Understanding why Izuku made the choice he made, and seeing that even Izuku seemed to be, without a lack of a better word, in a sorry state for himself, he decided not to belittle his friend that much. Izuku thanked Kirito for understanding, which Kirito shrugged, knowing that his understanding was more of a complacent thing rather than a true understanding. Izuku sighed. Eventually, they ended up getting away, and Kirito wasn't too upset at Izuku. Of course, Kirito decided to start working harder again, but now that they had both adopted a daughter, it made it quite difficult. Eventually, of course, Izuku eventually pulled Kirito to the side and told him something that Kirito had already figured and put together. Of course, Izuku asked if Kirito knew this 100%, that his daughter seemed to be an AI, but seems to be the main controlling one. And Kirito said yes, he did, and already decided to make measures for that. Izuku then stated that while he was inside the dungeon, he had saw something to hopefully cater towards Kirito's interest and make it easier on him. When Kirito asked what, Izuku stated that he had saw what appeared to be an item known as the admin table. Something that was meant to obviously give a person who has abilities for it admin privileges. And that his best option to keep his daughter and to save his ability without her accidentally triggering the system was probably to turn her into an item for now. Of course, Kirito talked with Asuna about this and eventually confronted Yui directly. Yui owned up to saying that yes, she was an AI. And then Kirito said that he has a way so that they can be together in other games as well, but would require turning her into an item. Yui accepted this with little to no argument, which made Kirito and Asuna both rather happy that not only would they be able to actually take Yui with them, but they would be able to head into other games with Yui. Or maybe if they're lucky, take Yui outside of the game entirely. Of course, this wasn't without its own faults and rules and restrictions, of course, but it was a step for all of them, which Kirito greatly thanked Izuku for. Izuku said it was no problem, as he then turned around and walked out. This confused Kirito some more, before he asked Izuku why he was walking away. And Izuku said, "Chief, you got your own family. Me rolling around with you guys would make me a third wheel." This caused Kirito a moment of stress and distrust. He understood that Izuku was doing this mainly out of consideration for him, but he didn't like the thought of Izuku just traveling solo, which almost made him feel hypocritical because he knew if Izuku had gone together with someone that he probably wouldn't even have been there himself. Probably would have just walked away. Eventually, Izuku left before turning around and continued on his way walking. Kirito was slightly upset by this, but understood and respected Izuku's decision, seeing how it was Izuku's own and not his to make. As Izuku walked out the door, waving goodbye to his friends. And that's where I'm going to leave this off, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button, and if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, goodbye.